WPLG 715, Fireman Kenny's on the air, helping you to stay safe in a world where danger never takes a vacation. On this episode of the Fireman Kenny Show podcast, we interview Wisconet manager Chris Vagasky about Lightning Safety Awareness Week. Welcome back to all 13 of our loyal listeners to another installment of the Fireman Kenny Show podcast. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the Fireman Kenny Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or whatever format you're listening to the show. The National Lightning Safety Council has declared June 22nd through the 28th as National Lightning Safety Week. On this episode, we interview Wisconet manager Chris Vagasky about lightning awareness and safety tips. Before we begin the podcast, we would like to mention our sponsors. For over a century, the National Fire Sprinkler Association has been advocating for a stronger industry and a safer world by promoting fire sprinklers in model codes and legislation. Their mission is simple: to protect lives and property from fire through the widespread acceptance of the fire sprinkler concept. Be sure to follow the National Fire Sprinkler Association on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can visit the National Fire Sprinkler Association website, www.nfsa.org. We would also like to thank our friends at Fire Suppression Solutions, distributor of fire suppression products for the fire service and for home use. You can follow Fire Suppression Solutions on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Now a word from Fire Suppression Solutions.
Fire can strike without warning, leaving you with precious little time to react. And if you are not prepared, the damage can be devastating to life and property. In the blink of an eye, your home or business could be on fire, with flames doubling in size every 30 seconds, leaving you helpless and unable to respond. Don't let this nightmare become a reality. That starts with being prepared. Our fire suppression products are designed to equip you with an effective response to any fire emergency, all while limiting additional damage, making you the true first responder, giving you the peace of mind that you have what you need to keep your loved ones and property safe until more help comes. Do you have a plan to respond to a fire emergency at your home or business? Protect your family, pets, and property with the tools from Fire Suppression Solutions. Contact us today and finish putting your plan into effect before it's too late.
For more information on Fire Suppression Solutions products, you can visit firess.us. Welcome back to all 13 of our loyal listeners for another episode of the Fireman Kenny Show podcast. The National Lightning Safety Council has declared June 22nd to the 28th as Lightning Safety Awareness Week. With us on this episode is Chris Vagasky from Wisconet. Chris, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Kenny.
So, Chris, you're a meteorologist. Why don't you give our listeners your background in meteorology and everything you had to do to get to where you are?
Sure. I always like to talk about how all meteorologists have kind of their villain origin story. So long time ago, there was a tornado that passed by my preschool in Michigan, and we were out in the hallway tracing our fingers along the cinder block walls, and that started what was really a fear of thunderstorms. So my parents got me all these great books about weather so that I would get over my fear, and that turned into a passion for thunderstorms, and now studying thunderstorms, studying lightning, that is a big part of what I do after being terrified of them for years and years. So I went to school in Oklahoma and in Mississippi to get my bachelor's and master's degrees in meteorology. I've worked on TV, and I've worked for private companies that build all the different weather instrumentation that measures weather anywhere from the surface of the earth all the way up to the stratosphere and even on Mars. And now I'm here in Wisconsin, and I'm building out a weather station network with a really great group of people. And we're putting new weather stations across all of Wisconsin. We're putting them across all different land uses, counties, cities, everywhere you can think of to better measure weather and soil conditions in Wisconsin. It's called Wisconet, and we're really trying to give you high-resolution, high-detailed, high-quality weather data all across the state.
So, Chris, it really sounds like a lot of interesting work with the Wisconet. Why don't you tell our listeners about Wisconet?
Yep. So Wisconet got its start a couple of years ago. We have funding from the United States Department of Agriculture through the Rural Partnerships Institute and from the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation to buy a lot of equipment so that we can put out 80 weather stations and to support the 6 people that work for Wisconet. And what we're doing is going county by county and getting a new weather station in that county. We're filling gaps between traditional airport weather stations and fire weather stations to really help put everybody in Wisconsin within about 20 miles of a high quality weather station. And you want to have this really high spatial resolution, so every 20 mile by 20 mile by 20 mile weather station grid across the state, because that really gives us the data on a spatial scale and a frequency scale, so every 5-minute data, to really help us better understand changes in the weather, whether it's big temperature swings as a result of a cold front, or seeing the winds and thunderstorms, or how much rain is falling from one field to the next, so that we can really give all of the different people that are affected by weather, and that's everybody in Wisconsin, high resolution and really high quality data to help them live their lives better and make better decisions based on the weather.
So, Chris, the National Lightning Safety Council is the organization that sponsors National Lightning Safety Week. Why don't you tell our listeners about the National Lightning Safety Council and your role with the organization?
Yeah, so the National Lightning Safety Council got its start about 25 years ago, and it's a group of around 10 to 12 lightning safety enthusiasts and lightning safety specialists. There are meteorologists and athletic trainers, lightning physicists, emergency room technicians who really have spent a lot of time understanding how people are affected by lightning and how to keep people safe from lightning. We got our start back in the early 2000s when there were around 50 to 70 people a year that were being killed by lightning in the United States. That number has come down significantly, down to now between 15 to 20 a year over the last few years as a result of things like improved education, improved communication of lightning hazards, lightning detection, and better outreach about the impacts of lightning on people and what to do to stay safe. So it's been a really great organization to be a part of. I'm a lightning data specialist with the National Lightning Safety Council, so I look at all of the lightning data that comes in from different lightning detection networks to help understand where lightning occurs, where people are when they're struck by lightning, and how we can use that information to reinforce some of those things that people need to know to stay safe from lightning.
So, Chris, all of our listeners have experienced a lightning or a thunderstorm at some point in their lifetime. Tell us exactly, what is lightning?
Lightning is the most common weather hazard that people experience in their lifetimes. Lightning is really just a giant spark of electricity. So, if you've ever walked across a carpeted floor in your socks and you've touched a doorknob and gotten that shock, that's a very, very small scale lightning bolt that you've created. Lightning in nature is just a very large version of that static shock that you've created. And it comes when you have air moving in clouds. So you look outside and you see the really tall thunderstorm cloud that has that anvil shape. What's going on inside of that cloud is there's upward and downward motion, and that's causing raindrops and ice crystals and grapple. And grapple is soft hail. It's kind of got the consistency of a Dippin' Dot if you've ever had the Dippin' Dot ice cream. And those particles are colliding as a result of the upward and downward motion. And when they collide, they're exchanging electrons. So some particles get an additional electron, some lose an electron, and that causes those particles to gain an electric charge. And when that electric charge in the cloud really builds up, at a certain point, which meteorologists are still trying to understand exactly what that point is, you get a breakdown of the insulation between those charges, and you get that flash of lightning. Most of the lightning occurs in the cloud because that's where all of the charge is. So 70 to 90% of the lightning that happens in a thunderstorm is actually in cloud lightning. The rest of it is between the cloud and the ground, and that's the lightning that causes injuries, causes fatalities, causes damage, and that's the really important lightning for people to be concerned with, because that's what's going to cause all the issues at the ground. But it is really just a small percentage of the overall lightning in a storm.
So, Chris, a lot of our listeners may not know all the particulars about lightning. Why don't you tell our listeners about lightning, such as how hot is it, how fast does it go, and how much energy is actually in a lightning bolt?
Yeah, it's really, the statistics around lightning are really mind-blowing. So lightning is hotter than the surface of the sun. It gets up to around 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And so when lightning heats up the air surrounding it to that 50,000 degrees, it causes this rapid expansion of the air. And we actually perceive that expansion of the air as thunder. So it's the heat of the lightning that causes us to hear thunder in the end. A quick tip for you, if you ever want to know how far away the lightning is, when you see the lightning, start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every 5 seconds is a mile. So if you see lightning and 10 seconds later you hear thunder, 2 miles away. And you can hear thunder for about 10 to 15 miles. So if you're about a minute from hearing the thunder after seeing the lightning, you're about 10 to 15 miles away from the storm, and that's about as far as lightning can strike as well. So if you can hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck by lightning. So that's why we always say when thunder roars, go indoors. Now, how much energy lightning carries? If you think about the electricity that's running through your walls, those are on 15 to 20 amp circuits usually. Lightning is 1,000 to 100,000 times more powerful than that. We see lightning measurements ranging from 15,000 amps up to even 300,000 amps. So that's a lot of electricity that's flowing through the lightning in a very short period of time. Because lightning, when it strikes, is only in contact with the ground for a few milliseconds at most. Some of the really longest lightning gets up to about a half a second, but it's a really short period of time that all of this energy is being transmitted between the cloud and the ground, or within the cloud. And that really packs a punch. So that's why we're always reminding people when thunder roars, go indoors, because you do not want to experience all of that electricity coming through you in such a short period of time. Most people, when they're struck by lightning, they do survive, but having all of that electricity running through you causes all sorts of issues with your nervous system, with your cardiovascular system, blows out eardrums, causes burns, messes with your brain. You'll have memory issues and things like that. So you just never want to take the risk of being out there during a thunderstorm, because once lightning starts coming down out of the cloud, you're not getting out of the way. It comes out of the cloud at over 200,000 miles an hour. So that's one of the fastest things on the planet. So anytime you hear thunder, you're close enough to being struck by lightning, so you would just want to get into your lightning safe place, your fully enclosed metal vehicle, or a substantial building that has 4 walls and a roof with electricity and plumbing running through the walls.
So, Chris, that is a great reminder when thunder roars, go indoors. And there's also something called the 30-30-30 rule when it comes to lightning. Why don't you tell our listeners what the 30-30-30 rule actually is?
Yeah, and so we've changed it now. It's now the 30-30 rule. With the 30-30 rule, this is to really help you understand when to get in and how long to stay inside. So if you see lightning, you start counting, and you hear the thunder within 30 seconds, that's your really good cue that it's time to get in. And then you stay inside for 30 minutes after the last thunder that you hear. And that usually is a really good way to fully stay safe, let the storm come in, pass, and get far enough away for you to stay safe. But to really simplify it, we just keep reminding people when thunder roars, go indoors. So anytime you can hear the thunder, you just want to be in that lightning safe place, because 99.6% of the lightning fatalities that have happened in the United States since the early 2000s have occurred when people were outside. There have been a couple of cases where people were on the phone and lightning came through the phone and killed them, or somebody in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago was in their car when lightning struck a tree and knocked a tree branch down on their car and killed them. But in general, if you're inside a substantial building, so something, again, that has 4 walls and a roof with electrical and plumbing running through the walls, or a fully enclosed metal vehicle, those are safe places and you won't be impacted by the lightning. So anytime you hear that thunder, just go inside, stay inside until you don't hear thunder anymore. If you don't have access to lightning data, or if you really want to ensure that you are out of the way of the thunder or the lightning, which is really the impact of a thunderstorm, use that 30-30 rule and stay inside for 30 minutes after the last thunder. And that's a good way to ensure that the storm has moved on.
So, Chris, this show deals a lot with statistics because with community risk reduction efforts, we want to have data to support our issues and making sure that we have solutions for the issues that the data supports. So let's talk about lightning and how many lightning strikes are there per year in the U.S.?
I actually have just published a paper last year about this very topic, so this is very timely. We count about 25 million lightning flashes in the United States. And so a lightning flash, if you want to think about it, is you're looking outside at a thunderstorm, you see a whole flicker of lightning. That whole flickering process is what we call a lightning flash. Scientifically, it is all of the lightning that occurs within 6 miles over a 1 second period. That flash is made up of lightning strokes, and the lightning stroke is the individual lightning discharges. There are about 40 to 50 million lightning strokes that make up those lightning flashes. And then there's what is called a ground strike point, and that's really what's important for keeping people and property safe from lightning. So a ground strike point is where on the ground that lightning is actually hitting the ground. And a lightning flash can hit the ground in multiple places. And so there are about 35 to 38 million ground strike points that strike the United States every year. And so I published a paper with some colleagues in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society in 2024. That paper is called How Much Lightning Actually Strikes the United States. So that paper goes into a lot of detail on how we came up with those numbers. It has maps of where the highest density flashes, strokes, and ground strike points are. So if you really want to dive into that data, I'll direct you to that Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society paper. But it's millions of times overall that lightning strikes the United States. So it is a very big hazard in the United States.
So, Chris, you mentioned earlier about how the number of deaths have gone down, mostly because of the outreach and messaging and people listening to those messages. But let's talk about what are the odds of being struck by lightning and how many injuries and deaths and fires do we get every year from lightning strikes?
So the odds now, and they continue to go down over time for a multitude of reasons. One, our population is going up, and two, the number of lightning victims is going down every year. So right now, the latest calculated odds, which is the average number of deaths and injuries from lightning divided by the number of people in the United States, it's about 1 in 1.7 million. So it's almost 1 in 2 million odds to be struck by lightning. But that goes to about 1 in 20,000 over your lifetime. So it is something that you do need to be aware of. Because, I think if you were told you had 1 in 20,000 odds of winning the lottery, you'd maybe play it a little bit more. So, it's a fairly high probability of being struck by lightning if you're not taking precautions from that lightning. Now, that number is derived from the fact that there are about 200 lightning victims in the United States every year. We get that average from the average number of deaths, which is about 20 a year, and there are about 9 to 10 times as many people who are struck by lightning each year that actually survive. So overall, there's about 200 victims, around 20 of them die, and around 150 to 180 are injured every year. We just saw a case in Texas where there were some people were trying to hold down a pop-up tent during a thunderstorm, and 14 people were injured in one event. So it's really important that you know, and we keep reiterating this when thunder roars go indoors, because we were very lucky that we didn't have multiple fatalities in Texas from some people that were just trying to keep a $50 tent from blowing away during a thunderstorm. So the number of insurance claims is actually on the increase. And that is in part because of what is kind of thought of as the bullseye effect. We keep building things and expanding into new places, and we're putting more property at risk of being struck by lightning. So there were about 71,000 lightning claims in the United States in 2023, and that resulted in over $1 billion in payouts. And so that's things like houses being damaged and houses catching on fire, churches that catch on fire, or damage to vehicles or other property as a result of lightning. Wildfires is another thing that we need to be concerned about with lightning. Lightning triggers about 15% of the wildfires in the United States, but those fires that are started by lightning, they burn about 60% of the acreage. So fires that are started by lightning, and they happen all across the United States, whether you're in Wisconsin or in Colorado, Florida, Alaska, California, it doesn't matter. Those cause a lot of property damage, whether it's to structures that people have built out in the woods or to forests or any other property that you want to consider out there. So lightning has significant impacts, whether it's to people's health through being struck by lightning and having injuries or death, but also to property and causing fires, causing damage, surges running through the houses, damaging electronics and things like that. So lightning protection is about protecting yourself, and it's about protecting your property. And you can do things like lightning rods and surge protection, and you can look at the Lightning Protection Institute. They can get you connected with certified lightning protection installers. Then the other thing, again, we just keep reiterating it, when thunder roars, go indoors.
So, Chris, the primary focus of the show is prevention, and you did briefly mention about lightning rods and surge protection. What other prevention tips do you have for our listeners to keep them safe from lightning?
First and foremost, it's know the forecast. And if there are thunderstorms in the forecast, reconsider outdoor plans. The best way to stay safe from lightning is to avoid it. So if you avoid any outdoor plans during thunderstorms, you've made a big first step towards staying safe. Now, if you do find yourself outside and a thunderstorm rolls in, you just want to keep moving towards your lightning safe place. You want to avoid things that are open to the elements. So avoid those open areas. Stay away from trees. There have been a lot of lightning injuries and fatalities in the last few years because people have stood under trees during thunderstorms. We saw a few years ago 3 people were killed by lightning across the street from the White House because they were under a tree during a thunderstorm and that tree got struck by lightning. Now, we've seen people under picnic shelters, gazebos, dugouts, canopies. Those are not fully enclosed, and those are not safe from lightning. So just because you're dry, it doesn't mean that you're safe. One thing we keep hearing is people asking about the lightning crouch. And that is something where if a thunderstorm is in the area, you crouch down on the balls of your feet and shrink yourself down to a smaller target. We actually stopped recommending that in 2008. With the lightning crouch, all that does is it takes you from being 5 foot tall or 6 foot tall and making you the size of a child. You wouldn't send a child out in a thunderstorm, so why would you leave yourself out in a thunderstorm at that height? It doesn't really protect you, and it just keeps you out in the storm for longer. So just keep moving toward your lightning safe place. People always say, well, I'm out on a hike. I'm out on the Ice Age Trail. I'm out far away from wherever my lightning safe place is. Well, as long as you keep moving towards that safe place, you're getting yourself safer and safer, and the storm is going to be moving on while you're moving. So overall, you're keeping yourself safer by moving than by staying stationary. So avoid using the lightning crouch. Now, when you are in your safe place, whether it's inside a substantial building or you're in your vehicle, you don't want to be in contact with anything that's plugged in. So no corded phones, which there aren't many corded phones anymore. No electronics that are plugged into the outlet. And that includes your cell phone plugged into the wall. You can use your cell phone as long as it's not plugged into the wall. But as soon as you plug something into the wall, you've created a potential pathway for the lightning to come in. Avoid contact with plumbing, because that's another way that lightning can come in. And if you're in a vehicle, don't have anything plugged into the cigarette lighter or any of the other outlets. Again, that's another way for lightning to come in. So you just want to be disconnected from the lightning. So inside, fully enclosed, not in contact with anything electrical or plumbing related.
So, Chris, this has been a really great discussion on lightning and lightning safety. So do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I just want to remind everybody that the spring and summer months, that's lightning season in the United States. And lightning is the biggest hazard that most people are going to come in contact with respect to weather in a given year and in their lifetimes. It's hotter than the surface of the sun. It's thousands of times more powerful than the electricity running through your walls, and it travels at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. So you're not going to get out of the way of it. The best way to stay safe is to avoid the lightning in general. So before you do any outdoor plans, take a look at that forecast. And if you have thunderstorms in the forecast, reconsider those plans, because there are no safe places outside during a thunderstorm. And as always, remember, when thunder roars, go indoors.
We would like to thank Wisconet manager Chris Vagasky for joining us on this episode to talk about Lightning Safety Awareness. For more information on Lightning Safety Awareness Week, you can visit the National Lightning Safety Council website, lightningsafetycouncil.org. WPLG 715, Fireman Kenny is returning to quarters.
Working together with first responders throughout southeast Wisconsin, you can help keep our community safe. They answer the call to be there for you whenever needed. Pure Oldies 106.9 proudly salutes our first responders. Here's another important message from City of Brookfield Fire Department Deputy Chief Nick Rajny on Pure Oldies 106.9.
Lightning caused 100 injuries and 20 deaths in the U.S. in 2019. In order to bring awareness to the dangers of lightning, the National Lightning Safety Council has declared June as National Lightning Safety Awareness Week. All thunderstorms produce lightning and are dangerous. When a storm approaches, immediately seek shelter indoors. Avoid wide open areas. Stay away from metal conductors such as wires and fences. For more information on lightning safety, visit lightningsafetycouncil.org.
Pure Oldies 106.9 proudly salutes our first responders. Get more information and links to first responders throughout southeast Wisconsin online now at pureoldies1069.com.